what's going on, and welcome to Designer Head Podcast. My name is Jan, and I will be your host. This is a podcast where I will be talking about technology, design, intersection between design and technology, and basically using this platform as my brain dump. If you like it, awesome. I really would love for you to follow me and follow my episodes and spread the word. If you don't, well, I'm sorry, but actually I'm not. My podcast, and I'll do with it whatever the hell I want. And so, without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. Hey, what's going on, everyone, and welcome to the fourth episode of Designer Head Podcast. This episode is going to be more personal. Well, kind of personal. I'll be sharing something that I have been an advocate of and for the last 2 decades. And this really comes from personal experience, both as a designer, creative, and design manager, if you will, and design leader. Here's the thing. A talented designer can design anything under the sun, can solve almost any problem under the sun. It doesn't matter what is the industry. It doesn't matter which field. It doesn't matter, is it simple, complex, or not. It doesn't matter if it's a B2B, B2C, B2B2C, government, military. It doesn't matter. A talented designer can really work on any project as long as you give them enough time to kind of dive deep into it and really understand what they're working on and what they need to solve and what they need to design. But at the end of the day, a talented designer is what I like to call an industry agnostic creative. They don't have limits. They only have the limits that companies typically like to put in front of them. But if you remove those limits, then they're unstoppable and unlimited, really. I want to start talking about on the design side for designers themselves. The reason why I started with this specific topic or with this statement is I wanted to make sure that people understand what exactly I'm talking about and what it really means. So for the last probably 4 years, a little bit more, that I've been what I like to say or what I like to call mentoring on steroids, I have met hundreds and in some cases thousands of people through my monthly sessions, one-on-ones, periodic conversations, LinkedIn messages, and so forth. And one of the biggest questions that I've been asked quite often is, should I become a specialist in a specific industry, or should I be a generalist? There's so many different ways we can look at the word generalist and specialist. A specialist can be somebody who specializes in a very specific field of design or a design function, such as you can be a purely visual designer, or you can be a purely UI designer, or you can be exclusively a UX researcher specializing in qualitative research or quantitative research, or you're an ethnographer, and the list goes on. It's essentially up to you to decide how and what you really see as your specialty or uniqueness. At some point of my career and our industry, there are even a specialist of information architecture. So essentially somebody who specializes in information architecture, and that's really all they do, day in and day out. Now, it can go even deeper. You can be let's say, a UX researcher specializing in qualitative research and specializing in automotive industry. Like that's your unique niche that you are exclusively specializing in, and that is what you're dedicating your career to. Now, on the other hand, you can be, quote unquote, a generalist that is specializing in a specific industry. You can be a generalist designer that is specializing in automotive industry. Or you can be a specialist ethnographer or information architect, but you're industry agnostic, which means it doesn't matter what the industry is, but you still have your exclusive specialty of what you do. You can look at it from a different perspective as well. You can be a generalist designer specializing in B2B only. That means that you're slightly expanding your horizons across different products and projects, but you're still staying within a business-to-business environment. Now, you can also be a generalist across everything and anything, which means you're a generalist designer and you're industry agnostic, which means that you can design and interested in designing for both business to business and business to consumer, or business to business, business to consumer, business to business to consumer. I know that's a mouthful and that's a lot. I'll explain what these things are. For those of you who don't know, business to business is any company that sells a service or a product to another business. And that's it. That's where it ends. Business to consumer, that is a company that sells their services or products directly to the consumer without a third party in between. Business to consumer, that's a company that has a service or a product that sells to another business that will be reselling it to a consumer. So think of it as business to consumer, or B2C, is something along the lines, you can probably think of Warby Parker. Warby Parker is a business that sells directly a product to their consumer. B2B, you'll think about something like Okta. Okta Security is a company that sells services and products directly to another businesses. They're not interested in the consumers. Now, business to consumer, B2B2C, think of it as an underwriter insurance. So there is or even better is a financial services. There is a financial services that sells loans and mortgages to another bank, and then that bank resells those mortgages or provides their services or loans to actual consumers. And you can find a lot of different businesses in these different environments, right? But you need to be clear in understanding what is the difference between B2B, B2C, B2B2C, and also there is a B2G, which is B2 government, and the list goes on. So you can really go deep into understanding what are the differences in different businesses and what they do. Now, leaving that aside for a minute, and I'm hoping that you guys will go and research this and find whatever field or environment you really want to be in. What I want to talk about, and the reason why I'm bringing up the subject is the questions that I've been getting or being asked about, should I be a specialist in a specific industry, or should I be a generalist? Or should I be a specialist in what I do, regardless of an industry, or should I be a generalist? Now, there are many different ways, as I mentioned before, you can think about it and look at it, right? But at the end of the day, from my personal perspective, and once again, my personal perspective, and this is what this podcast is all about, is me sharing my opinions and my personal perspectives on things. Being a specialist, as much as it might be tempting and maybe interesting and great and will make you definitely an exclusive find, there are people that can specialize in something very unique and specific. For instance, my wife and I, we started watching documentary about Hans Zimmer. So Hans Zimmer is one of my favorite composers. He actually became incredibly sought after, and he is one of the most successful composers in the world right now for one specific reason. He was an early adopter of digital or digitized composing. So, quote unquote, computerized sounds, right, that he was applying to films and shows and so forth. And he became unique in that sense. And so he became incredibly successful, right? But he's a single one. And I assure you that today there are probably hundreds of specialists in the exact same thing that he does, but they're not as successful as Hans Zimmer for many different reasons. And one of them is because Hans Zimmer is still around. So what I'm trying to say is, if your true passion, like you really, really want to be a specialist in, I don't know, qualitative research or UI design for mobile applications exclusively, it's your prerogative. You can definitely take your career to that direction. But there's a warning that I would like to make for everyone who decides to be an exclusive specialist of some sort. One of the things that I have observed over the last 2 decades of our industry, and living today through a third or fourth downturn of our industry in the last 24 years of me being in this industry, every time there is an economic downturn, every time a company cuts down on their expenses, goes through a mass layoffs, these are the professions or titles that typically suffer first and most. Why? Because when companies trying to save money, they don't necessarily see the incredible value that a specialist can bring to the table. They still understand that they need some sort of design service, some sort of a designer in a company. They still see a need for a person or 2 people or a small group or small team of people that will continue supporting their product or service. But that's when they turn to generalists that can do many different things, maybe not be incredibly amazing at every single one of them or any single one of them, but they can cover, which means they can plug some holes while the company is riding the downturn, with the thought process that once everything goes back to normal or on the rise or on the growth, they'll start rehiring again those exclusive specialists. So when you really think about that, becoming a generalist and the industry agnostic, you essentially a future market resilient. I don't know how else to put it, really. When you're being viewed as somebody who can bring value of 4 or 5 different people with a salary of one, maybe bigger salary than usual, right? So let's say the market is great, specialists are in high demand, generalists are not in the highest demand. In that situation, typically salaries for generalists, let's say you're 5 to 7 or maybe 8 years of experience, your average salary at a big tech company, maybe base salary 180, 170, or even 200. But at the same time, specialists are raking in 250 or 260 or 300. Why? Because they're like narrow specialists in a very specific thing. And so they're experts in that area. Now, when shit hits the fence and companies are trying to save money, they're going to be okay. They're going to be more than okay. They'll be looking for people who can plug the holes that they just laid off with a single salary. So instead of paying $500,000 to 2 specialists, they'll pay $250,000 to a single generalist that can plug the holes of 2 people, let's say, just as an example. Equally, the same goes for industry agnostics. So if you're specializing in B2B, I'm not going to dive really deeper, because if you're making a decision to become really an expert in designing for, I keep bringing up automotive because it's like the freshest thing on my mind, because we recently switched our car. If you're diving deep into becoming an expert in automotive industry and then being a designer for that specific industry, you're honestly, no offense, but I think you're shooting yourself in the foot by being so specific in the industry that you're targeting, that if, God forbid, tomorrow another 2008 happens and automotive industry is basically begging for bailout from the government, you're out of a job and you can't find any other, because all you've done for the last 7, 10, 15 years is designing for automotive industry. And banks typically like to hire somebody who have at least a little bit of banking experience, or insurance have the same thing, and finance, investments, and healthcare, like you name it. A lot of these big industries, they always looking for people who have maybe not a fully life dedicated experience, but at least a little bit or somewhat of an experience designing for that specific industry. So if you're not industry agnostic, if you're not kind of putting yourself out there and gaining experience and expertise and know-how across multiple different industries, you're really shooting yourself in the foot that if in the future something happens to your desired industry, well, you're kind of screwed. What I'm trying to communicate here is you have to be industry agnostic, and you kind of have to be a bit of a generalist. And you know what? I think one of the probably best advice that I can give to people who are asking me the question, should I be a generalist? Should I be a specialist? I would say you probably should be a T-shaped designer. Now, a T-shaped designer or a T-shaped creative is somebody who's specializing in single thing, but knows how to do other things, right? So you can be an incredible expert in mobile UI design, but at the same time, you also have really good experience in usability testing, user research, quantitative or qualitative studies, and maybe information architecture, ethnography, and whatnot. Like you create this kind of a T-shaped environment within your specialty where you're really good at one thing, but you're also pretty good in many other things. Then you become a desired asset to companies, regardless of the companies, really. And so when you really think about that, if you really want to make sure, I keep saying really a lot. I'm just trying to say that I'm really, really trying to make my point across here. Again, really, really, really. I've been doing this for 24 years. I've seen ups and downs in our industry. I've seen what happens to designers in the industry. And I also have seen what happens to people who are exclusive experts and specialists in a singular thing, and what happens to people who are not. I guess what I'm trying to do here is to not convince. I don't want to convince anyone to do anything. It's your prerogative. It's your life. It's your career to do whatever you want to do with it. But what I am trying to communicate is, if you really do want to be a future proof, if you will, and make sure that no matter what happens in the industry, you still have a chance to find a job or a career path or ability to find even clients, then you have to be at least a T-shaped designer, and you have to be an industry agnostic one. It's up to you if you want to choose B2B or B2C. Everyone has their own choices. I personally, as much as I really enjoy working on either, if tomorrow somebody comes to me and puts me in front of a choice between B2B or B2C, I would always choose B2B because I love it more. But it doesn't mean that I don't know how or cannot work in B2C, because I've done it before and I've done it successfully. So again, if you want to make sure that wherever your career is going, that you will always be at least to some level hireable, A, you have to be fairly industry agnostic, and B, you have to look at yourself and try to develop yourself as a T-shaped designer. And you also have to make sure that you always learn new things, because our industry evolves rapidly and new things coming out every single day, and you have to be at the top of your game and keep learning these things. So I think I'm going to wrap up the rant for designers themselves on this subject, and I kind of want to switch to the hiring managers and companies. My entire point or thing for companies when they are looking for specialists or experts or whatnot within their specific industry, right? Again, I'm not talking about what you do as a designer. I'm talking about companies looking for designers, whatever they are, generalist, T-shape, specialist, doesn't matter. But when they're looking for designers that are specializing in their respective industry, now you as a company or you as a hiring manager or you as a recruiter looking for a specialist for that specific industry are doing a disservice to the company, and you companies are doing disservice to yourself. One of the things that I've learned over my long career is when companies are hiring within their respective bubble and they're designers that walking between these companies and kind of moving between them periodically, because each company likes to hire from other companies like their competition and stuff. This is where you and how you stifle innovation within your company. Sadly, when you hire designers that have been in your industry for the last 5+ years, if not more, they are not as versed in a lot of different things that can bring innovation to your company. So when you're looking at this from the perspective, I want somebody who knows how to design for an insurance company or an insurance product. That's great. But then if you hire people who that's really all they did for the last 5, 7, 10 years, they don't know any better. Like they were literally doing the exact same thing that you already have for another company. Were they doing something slightly different? Maybe. Will you find and they bring some maybe slightly different perspective because they came from a different company? Maybe. Will they bring in some serious innovation to your company? Probably not. Again, I'm not going to generalize the entire industry of designers. There's some designers who can stay within the same respective industry for a long time and still be able to continuously innovate. But that's not because they did that for the last 10 years. It's because they expanded their horizons elsewhere, other ways to keep innovating. You can't be in a bubble and innovate. That's my personal opinion. You have to have a broad experience. You have to have a broad knowledge base. You have to have experiences that go outside of your respective industry or outside even your respective circle of conversations, communications, and consumption of information. You have to be widely versed. You have to have some sort of like a 360 degree of information flow or knowledge gain from so many different industries in order to be more innovative within your respective industry or field. So for all the hiring managers and companies that I see time and time again looking for a designer that has at least 5 years of experience in X industry, you're avoiding innovation. Innovation lives when you bring in diverse group of people together. Innovation lives at the crossroads of people that see things differently. Innovation happens at a crossroads of ideas that come from different industries, from people or creatives or designers that have experienced other products, other fields, other industries, because then they can adapt or maybe bring in an idea from how automotive industry acquires customers to an insurance company or to a healthcare company or vice versa. Or maybe somebody who worked on an aerospace product and suddenly they've been hired by a healthcare company. They can definitely bring in some experiences or know-how that the healthcare company never even thought about, just because they've been in a separate industry and so they see things slightly differently. And that's where innovation really happens. So what I'm trying, I guess, to communicate to both sides here, and this is really both sides, right? You have the side of the designer who wants to be, or maybe potentially chooses to be, or unavoidably got stuck in a specific industry. You're stifling your own innovation abilities. You're shooting yourself in the foot for not being able to get hired by other industries if you spend too much time in a singular industry. And equally the same goes for companies that constantly keep hiring people within the exact same industry and keep being surprised and scratch their heads of like, why aren't we innovating? Well, because you don't hire the right people. You don't hire people with diverse experiences and diverse thinking and diverse ideas and the way they look at the world. You keep hiring people from the exact same bubble that you're living in. And so, of course, they're not going to bring in that much innovation because it's the same bubble with maybe slightly different colors or slightly different names or slightly different approach to things. But that's about it. So my point to you as to the company itself, to hiring managers, is find talented designers. Honestly, put yourself in a place where who gives a fuck where actually they worked before? Who gives a fuck if they worked at a big company? Who gives a fuck if they worked at a small company? Who gives a fuck if they worked in your industry or not your industry? Find a talented designer. A talented designer can solve your problems regardless of how big or small your problems are. A talented designer will be able to design for your product or for your company, for your service, for your industry, regardless what they've done before. But find the right one. Find that talented designer that can come in, look at your product, look at your industry, look at your service, look at what you're doing today and find a better way to do things and bring that innovation and create the things that you desire to create to keep growing as a business and keep breaking in your profits. Those are the people who will help you to do so. And for designers listening to this episode right now, expand your horizons. Try different things. Go fail at some things. Go try yourself in a different industry. I don't know, you're a product designer in a digital world. Go try and build or design a physical product. Go try yourself in fashion design. Go try yourself in interior design. Go try yourself in painting, photography. I don't know. I don't care. Try yourself in different fields and different things and try yourself in different industries. Go and try and design for automotive and insurance and healthcare and consumer product and dating app or cybersecurity, government. I don't know. Try yourself everywhere you can possibly apply yourself to expand your horizons, to make sure that when you're looking at things, when you're looking at problems, you're not looking at them from a singular side or from a singular mindset, but you're looking at them broadly from different angles. I don't remember who said that, but I fully agree with that because this is who I am and this is what I've been doing my entire career. Somebody said recently, and I don't remember where or who, that if you want to be an incredibly successful designer, stop reading design books. Stop living in design blogs. Stop living in design YouTube channels and podcasts and all of that. Expand your horizons. Read other books. Try other things. Listen to other podcasts, watch different YouTube channels, consume information outside of your respective field of career. I'm saying all of this because it comes from my personal point of view and it comes from my personal experiences. I'm an incredibly curious individual, sometimes to a fault. What I consume as my information, it's probably 15% to 20% design related, and then everything else is everything else. I consume history information. I consume information about finances and investing. I consume information about real estate. I consume information about construction, building, photography, fashion, art, music, politics, different industries. I'm curious and interested in different industries. And so I read a lot about different industries and how they operate and what they do and how they do things. I've tried myself across an incredibly vast landscape of different industries, fields, products, companies, verticals, and so forth. The reason for that is I worked at agencies, and it's really easy at agencies to try yourself on so many different things. That's why when many of the starting out designers coming to me and asking, where should I work at an agency or not? And I always say, I think you should experience an agency life or an agency work at least once in your career, and preferably early in your career, because that will give you an ability to quickly recognize what you're really good at, what you're really interested in, and how to navigate incredibly tight deadlines, difficult stakeholders, juggle different projects at the same time, and navigate how to work with coworkers that don't sometimes really want to work with you. That's a really, really amazing career and life lesson that is being taught to you incredibly fast if you're working in an agency. So I guess what I want to leave you all with today is, for companies, diversify your hiring. Do not get stuck in the same. For designers, future-proof yourself by making sure that you're at least a T-shaped designer and you're an industry agnostic one. Try yourself. Don't be afraid. You'll be surprised how all of these experiences will shape you and make you into so much better creative in the future that will help you build a successful career. And here we are at the end of the episode. Thank you so much for listening and spending that time with me on this episode. Now, I do want to mention that everything that has been said, it is my opinion and my opinion only. It does not represent any companies, entities, persons, and whatnot that I have worked with before, currently, or in the future. It's only my opinions. Once again, I want to thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing or hearing or talking to all of you in the future. If you have any questions or you want me to cover any specific topic or any specific subject, please find me on LinkedIn, reach out, send me a message. And I would really appreciate to get some sort of a review or feedback of how you like this podcast or this specific episode. If there is anything you don't like, you like, please just share with me so I can learn and make this experience a lot better, because this is a project for me. And so, thank you once again. And on that note, never stop learning, and I'll see you all next time.